In this day and age, what will it take to become a Main Street millionaire? Let's ask the woman who wrote the book on it. My name is Jenna, and this is Smarter News. All right, today we're speaking with Codie Sanchez, an amazing businesswoman and author. And I should actually preface that, not just an author, a New York Times bestselling author, Codie Sanchez of Main Street Millionaire. Codie, I have a collector's item because this is the first edition, right? The next version is going to have the New York Times on the front, right?
It is. I know. Yeah, we got to no more printing of the ones without New York Times because that thing is miserable to try to hit. So,
Yes, it is. It is, and only authors know this. I know it a little bit from my husband, thankfully. But congratulations! It's a huge accomplishment, and I'm really excited to talk to you about your book and your mission in life. But in order to look ahead, I want to look at the past a little bit because you have a really fascinating story, and you started out in journalism. Tell me a little bit about that. How did you start out in journalism? What drew you to that career? And how did you then transition from journalism to business?
yeah. Well, I started out as a journalist along the U.S.-Mexico border, covering human trafficking, drug smuggling, and really I was following my curiosity with this like single idea of like, how is my last name Sanchez, and things look a lot different for me on this side of the border than they did for other people along the border that had the last name Sanchez. And so I was sort of fascinated by this idea of like arbitrary lines and how do they get drawn and what does it mean to live on one side or the other. And so we got a grant from the Howard Buffett Foundation to cover this sort of journalism. And I did that for about a year and a half while I was still in school. I graduated a little early and from ASU. So like it wasn't that big of an accomplishment. We were mostly partying. I took a small break to go do journalism. But what was fascinating to me is when I did journalism, I wanted to cover this idea of like what creates freedom. That was my idea. Like how do people get freedom? And at the time I thought it was politically driven, but now I actually think most freedom is driven by money. And so seeing all of it live made me realize, wait a second, it's actually not the politicians who save us. We have to save ourselves. And the difference between Codie Sanchez on this side and Codie Sanchez in Mexico is really socioeconomics. It's not actually what country we're from. And so then I got obsessed with, well, how do more people get money? Because if we have more money, then we can push back on others who are trying to architect our life. And so that's what led me to then finance.
And so did you just kind of launch into a financial firm? How did you get your start into the financial world, and what did you see when you got there?
Yeah, I think every single thing that you want in life can start with a good question. And so I wish that I had known earlier how powerful being a journalist was to becoming an investor. What do investors do? They ask a lot of questions to find holes to allocate money and resources. What do good business people do? They don't have all the answers. They know the right questions to ask. And so thankfully, journalism kind of trained me. When I determined, hey, I want to go into finance, I said, well, where do finance people go? Well, let's go and hang out where finance people go. And then I went there and I asked people questions about things I didn't understand in finance. Like, why are you doing this? What's happening here? People love to talk about themselves. And so actually one of the best ways you can look smart is just by making the other person feel smart. And so I think that's what I did. So I went to a bunch of these conferences and events with financial firms, recruiting events or inclusion events. And eventually I met a few people who were like, you asked some interesting questions. Curiosity, I think, often is something people want in business. I would choose curiosity and drive over raw intellect and lack of curiosity almost always. And so that's how I got my first little gig, was just asking a bunch of people questions, and they liked hearing the responses.
That's one of our mottos actually at Smarter News. I don't know if motto is the right word. Our guiding light, curiosity over commentary, because it really is where you feel your freedom and your liberty. I'm also hearing from you that I could just shut this all down and become a very successful investor.
You literally probably could. Especially because the worst investors are the ones who pretend that they know everything. And that's like the Achilles heel, because investing is often a zero-sum game. And so if you pretend like you know everything all the time and you let your ego get in the way, well, the scoreboard is like, did we make money or did we lose money? And the only way you get to the truth is asking questions, even of teams. So I actually think you probably could go give some of these Wall Street guys a run for their money.
Well, you're describing a archetype that I might be familiar with based on my time in business news. And you're right. It's really interesting to see who asks questions and who doesn't. But still, so you're in this financial world. And yet again, you're like, you know what? This isn't for me. I want to do something again, completely different. And now you've built this amazing platform and an ecosystem around contrarian thinking and around this idea of a Main Street millionaire. So why did you believe that this particular book, Main Street Millionaire, needed to be written?
Well, if you look at the data in our world today, we have never had a lower percentage of ownership in the US ever. Right now, we sit at somewhere between 6 and 7% of the US owns a business. When the country was founded, that was 80%. So we started as a nation of owners, and we have slowly become a nation of renters and serfs. And the truth of the matter is owning anything is just a pushback on power. And so my belief is that it's not shopping local that we need to do always, it's owning local that we need to do. And one of the few places we can actually compete with the tech gods that exist around us is locally. You know, if you've been to a local coffee shop as opposed to your national chain, you know the difference. You're like, oh, they remembered my name. It's clean. It's cute. You know, it's not even, it's better coffee. And so I think actually as the world becomes more automated, what's going to happen is experiences become more important and human connection becomes more important, especially as AI can do everything for us. And so my belief is we are sitting at this time in which we need to get ownership because we don't own anymore. And then simultaneously, we're sitting at this time where a lot of owners are starting to retire because they're old. And if we can pair this ownership crisis with the great retirement into becoming our own version of Main Street millionaires, we can actually change our lives. And so the book sort of has a really aggressive thought, which is this isn't like a self-help, feel-good, blah, blah book. It's like follow these tactics, take a little pain up front, and actually change the trajectory of your life and maybe your community and maybe even your country.
And you're speaking from experience because you are an owner. Do you remember the first business that you bought?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the first business that I bought that's like a Main Street business was a laundromat. And so it wasn't anything fancy. It wasn't anything sexy. But that purchase of a small business, it showed me that I could do this. And we talked about, how things can be a gateway to something else before. I call laundromats gateway drug businesses. And so these small little businesses that can be your little bite on the apple of ownership can show you that after a while, once you taste ownership, it's hard to go back and you become a little unemployable because you realize what you are capable of doing individually. And so, yes, I've done this firsthand, and we've taught something like 5,000 students how to do it in our programs, and 100,000 people a year go through our events.
That is amazing. And I can attest to how a laundromat could be successful as a mom of 3 children that are suddenly getting closer to their teenage years. And I'm scared about what's to come. The amount of laundry that my household alone produces is enough for anyone to just go out and buy a laundromat. Okay. It's a recession-free business. But you know what? One of the things
our best clients, by the way, were moms. So you have your laundry, like you have a nice laundry machine. You're like, why wouldn't you just use it? You're like, because I like, I don't know, living for myself occasionally, showering. I would like to not do constant laundry. And so Wash and Fold was one of our biggest business ventures, and it was moms.
You know, one of the things I really loved in your book is that you said it's not just about owning a business, because owning a business it can sound really scary. What you're saying is you don't have to be the operator. So you can own the business, but somebody else is running it. And I think that's such a key thing for anyone listening to this to distinguish, because it is very different. I can attest to this. Owning a business and also having to operate it. Operations are very, very difficult.
Well, I haven't met somebody who, before they've ever ran a business, thought they could. It's almost like all of us are scared to do this thing, but you're likely not going to die because of that. And you're likely going to have more experience, a bigger network, and better stories at the end of getting a little bit of ownership. So one, I'm like, yeah, it sucks and it's worth it. So you should do it. And then the second part is, no, you shouldn't operate your own business forever. You know, I didn't actually operate my laundromats. I was sort of the capital for it. But I think the core is like you have to be curious about the business overall and want to understand how to grow it and then insert talent into the business that can help you alongside. And you're kind of pulling up the next generation as you take the realm of ownership. But yes, I do not think that you have to be the CEO of your business forever. I just hired a new president. This business is big. I work all the time in this business, but I was like, I'm operating it too much. I want a guy to come in and actually run it for me. And so we just hired one.
Sounds like a good idea. And you're at the helm of really a growing business. For those of you who look at you and say, well, yeah, Codie, look at, you were able to build this, but I don't have those same skills. And by the way, this is kind of a scary time in the country. There's a lot of things that are unpredictable. We have tariffs one day, we don't have tariffs the other day. We have pandemic, and then we don't have a pandemic. What would you say to someone that says, hey, I understand what you're saying, but I'm feeling nervous about just what's happening in the world? How do you forge ahead and navigate times like these?
Yeah, well, one, it's real. Like, I get why you're confused. I think everybody in the world today feels, not only does it feel like there's constant change, but the change is fire hosed into our face from not SmartHER news, but other news sources. And so, even if our life actually feels pretty good, we see the fires burning down in California, we see what's going on in North Carolina, and all of a sudden our body can't really tell between a threat to our actual physicality or one online. And so that's all real. Second step is, I love the Baron Rothschild quote, which is, buy when there's blood in the streets, maybe especially when it's your own. The truth of the matter is that you can make money in any market. In any market in the world. It's never going to be the right time. Just like I hear it's never the right time to have kids. And, during the Great Depression, there was a 20% at its peak unemployment rate. That meant 80% of people were still employed. Now, was it incredibly difficult? Yes. Will it be for all of us? Yes. But I don't think you can wait for perfect timing, because often the best, it's called a vintage, but the best year in investment funds is a down year. So to start in investing, you typically don't want to start investing in a peak year when everybody's making a lot of money, because you're in a top of the cycle. Oftentimes it's better to start when it feels tough. And then the only thing that I'll say is, like, keep your day job. Keep your day job. Do a side hustle, start small, get your husband or wife or sister or brother to run it or do it along with you, and then stair step your way to ownership. You don't have to like full send off the cliff into ownership. You can take small baby steps.
The Thelma and Louise effect.
Yeah, it's not a great, like people are like, I learned how to buy a business yesterday. I'm going to quit my job. I'm like, the thing is, we should keep your income. I was too big of a wuss to quit my job for like years. So it's totally fine to be like, I want my comfortable income. That feels good. And then I'm going to try this thing a little bit more every single day and year. And it's going to be really hard. But, two stats that if you want to be a millionaire, 60% of all millionaires have ownership in a business. If you want to be worth a lot of money, those who are worth 30 million plus, 88% of them have ownership in a business. So yeah, it sucks, but so does being poor. And so at some point we have to decide what suck we want. And I wish there was an easier way, but I'm not sure there is.
Yeah, as you say, choose your hard. And that's one thing I'd just like to finish up with you here is that, yes, this is a book about ownership. Yes, this book is about financial freedom and liberty. But the themes that you talk about in your business are also about life and how to live to your fullest. Is that something that just came naturally, Codie, in talking about money? And is there one thing that you can share with us throughout this journey that has left you a little bit smarter?
Yeah. Well, I would say, first of all, that business is just the game of life, but with money involved. So the cool thing about business is I think it's this little board game that you get to control, a little fiefdom of yours, and you get to see how good am I at this game. And if I make these changes, I make more money and I am rewarded for becoming a quote unquote better business person. And I think the game of life is the same thing. You have a scoreboard and you have a little board game. And if you are rewarded with becoming a better person, then you have better friends, better relationships, better, kids, whatever the case may be. And so it's really just like life, except add money to the mix. And what I've realized over time is that to try to separate business and life seems crazy to me. There's just integration that has to happen between the two. And I think I'm the happiest because my husband works in my business with me. My dad works in my business with me. We integrate in our household. And so that's been really big. And I guess the lesson that I would leave, for people here overall is that the degree is dead and experience is the future. I think that the certification is dead and you doing the thing is the future. And so instead of us feeling like we have to go get the degree, we have to go get the credential, we've got to go let somebody else give us permission, I think it's time we go back and take it.
All right, I'm going to get out the whiteboard when we're done with the interview. I'm going to start sketching. I feel it. This is what's happening. I got those. I got to get those big Post-it papers, Codie, the
Yeah.
ones that you hang up on the wall, and you start. I'm like, okay, if Smarter News was a board game, then
That's
how I
right.
like it. I'm
I
into it.
also
I'm ready.
love the whiteboard. Oh, it's like my love language.
Codie, this is great. Congratulations again with your first and New York Times bestselling book, A Main Street Millionaire. I'll make sure to put the links for everybody to check out along with your business. Highly suggested, and appreciate your time so much. It's been really fun getting to know you, and congratulations with all of your success.
Well, same. And to everybody listening, I think you're doing a beautiful thing, which is listening to humans non-emotionally, but trying to get to the truth instead. So, congratulations to you and all of your listeners for being some of the few.
Well, we're forging ahead, crusaders, revolutionaries in nonpartisan news. Codie, thank you.
Thank you.